Republican Senator Katie Britt is being called out by a sex trafficking survivor for twisting her story in order to attack President Biden on the border. Britt's communication director confirmed that Britt was talking about Karla Jacinto Romero, a woman who has previously testified to Congress about being trafficked in Mexico. Now, speaking to CNN on Sunday, Romero said that her story had been used by U.S. politicians and politicians elsewhere for political purposes, but that Britt got a lot of things wrong.
In fact, I hardly ever cooperate with politicians because it seems to me that they only want an image. They only want a photo, and that to me is not fair. And I think she should first take into account what really happens before telling a story of that magnitude.
And Erica, Karla Jacinto also told me that Senator Britt got many of the facts of her story wrong. First of all, Jacinto says that one, she was not trafficked by Mexican drug cartels, but by a pimp that operated as part of a family that entrapped vulnerable girls in order to force them into prostitution. Two, she also said that she was never trafficked in the United States, as Senator Britt appeared to suggest. Three, she was kept in captivity from 2004 to 2008 when President George W. Bush, a Republican, was in office as opposed to the current administration, as the senator implied. And four, she met the senator at an event at the border with other government officials and anti-human trafficking activists instead of one-on-one. CNN has confirmed much of what Jacinto has said in prior reporting, and her story hasn't changed since we first spoke. Jacinto told me no one reached out to her to ask for her permission to use her story as part of a political speech. Someone using my story and distorting it for political purposes, she told me, is not fair at all.
Oh, would you look at that? A Republican using a trafficking survivor's story to attempt to push a political agenda not at all related to helping victims of trafficking. Shocker, right? Well, real surprise. Except not really. Again, this didn't happen in the United States. Some viewers may have got that impression when Britt said things like, we wouldn't be okay with this happening in a third world country. This is the United States of America. Okay, once again, it didn't happen here. I'm not saying it doesn't happen here, of course, but couldn't she find more of a local story? Had to take somebody else's that didn't even happen here, and even under Biden, and then worse, blame it on Biden's border policies? Gross. Just incredibly gross and very exploitative of an actual victim. Okay? And yes, by the way, people should take trafficking very seriously, sex trafficking, but Republicans don't. Instead, they hype up all of this, make up stories or steal other people's stories and then twist them around to fit their political narrative, and then get people focused on, for example, their whole thing about sex trafficking. They get a lot of the facts wrong in what happens. They get a lot of the facts wrong when it comes to how it happens, where it happens, and they actually end up diverting resources away from actually going after the actual real sex trafficking that is happening in human trafficking. And then they target people like LGBTQ, right? They target that community. They target drag queens. They target all the people that are not doing anything wrong. And they take valuable resources away from groups, organizations that are actually really combating trafficking. So it's gross on multiple levels, and they're actually harming the victims more than anything, more than raising actual awareness. So that said, Britt herself had to backpedal a bit because even Fox News was forced to grill her about it.
But to be clear, the story that you relayed is not something that's happened under the Biden administration, that particular person.
Well, I very clearly said I spoke to a woman who told me about when she was trafficked when she was 12. So I didn't say a teenager. I didn't say a young woman, a grown woman, a woman when she was trafficked when she was 12. And so listening to her story, she is a victim's right advocate who is telling this is what drug cartels are doing. This is how they're profiting off of women. And it is disgusting. And so I am hopeful that it brings some light to it, and we can actually do something about human trafficking, and that's what the media actually decides to cover.
Okay.
I think it's pretty obvious that Katie Britt didn't listen to that story. She said, oh, she's a victim's rights advocate who was telling this is what drug cartels are doing. Wait a minute, but she wasn't trafficked by a drug cartel. She even said that. So what you said wasn't true at all. But there's a reason that she keeps repeating this. Oh, it's the cartel, the cartel, the cartels, it's the cartels. Nothing scares Fox News viewers more than the words drug cartel, other than, of course, migrant caravan. Okay. And I really think that there is one simple reason for that one.
The Republican Party's racist.
Okay. Don't get me wrong, though. The cartels are incredibly dangerous. They're responsible for a lot of deaths. Not minimizing that, right? But here's the thing. That empowers the cartels, okay? It's the money that they get from the United States, right? Specifically, people who want drugs, who demand drugs. Where do you think the drugs are going? I mean, yes, a lot of them do get intercepted by Border Patrol, but not all of it, right? The reason that cartels keep sending the drugs to the United States is because people in America, U.S. citizens, want the drugs. Are we talking about that, though? Are we drilling down to, defeat the causes of addiction? No. No. Their policy positions are more police, more Border Patrol, and even possibly invading and bombing Mexico. I'm not kidding. A sovereign country. Well, we're going to take down their drug cartels by doing a full invasion. Oh, yeah, that'll work out. Republicans seem to believe that every problem is solvable through more police, more guns, more violence, okay? More prisons. When in reality, look, addiction actually can be tackled without those things. The three biggest factors of addiction actually involve genetics, environment, and mental health, okay? Imagine if we had a fully functional mental health system in this country that's accessible to everybody. Because right now, it is not. The most common roots of addiction, by the way, are things like chronic stress, a history of trauma, mental illness, and family history of addiction. It seems like you could treat those things, instead of throw violence at it, okay? Instead of going after the symptoms, which, by the way, the symptom of all of these things is the actual addiction, okay? That is, the addiction is the symptomatic of all these different factors, the trauma, the stress, the mental illness, etc., okay? But, instead of doing that, we do the opposite. Now, the thing is if you actually take on the root causes of addiction, you would actually disempower the cartels because there wouldn't be a demand for drugs. They wouldn't have the money. And, of course, that would also reduce other crimes related to addiction. I know, right? It wouldn't be a simple thing to do. Yeah, yes, I make it sound simple. There's actually a lot of work involved and a lot of different factors that have to come into play and work together. You'd actually have to have people that, in power that want to solve this issue, to really solve this issue and put in the work. We don't have that, okay? Now, what we do have instead are people that want to continue to fearmonger about the border and are using drugs, addiction, etc. as a way to do that. And of course, to fearmonger about scary brown people. So much so that they'll actually twist the stories of survivors who are in that demographic in order to do it. It's just gross all around. And Katie Britt should be just absolutely ashamed of herself. I know that she probably isn't, because Republicans have no shame when they do this, but she should be ashamed anyway for being caught in such a ridiculous twisting of the facts.